What if Robert Baratheon cancelled the boar hunt and lived long enough to see the Lannisters' treason? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The Kingswood sits heavy with morning mist, the trees close and dark, their branches knitting the pale sky into ragged pieces overhead. Robert Baratheon rides at the front of the hunting party, and if a man squinted through the fog, he might almost see the king Robert used to be, the one who hammered Rhaegar Targaryen into the waters of the Ruby Ford, who swung a warhammer like the weight of it meant nothing, who earned the name the Demon of the Trident with blood and fury, and a war that left half a kingdom burning. That man is still in there, somewhere, buried under 17 years of wine and feasting, and the slow, numbing boredom of a throne he wanted, right up until the moment he had it. He sits his horse like a king. It is the only kingly thing he still does without effort. Sir Barristan Selmy rides on his left, white-cloaked and straight-backed, his eyes moving through the trees the way they have always moved, steady and patient, cataloguing distance and shadow with the quiet habit of a man who has spent his life standing between kings and the things that want to kill them. He has been watching Robert Baratheon since the man was 20 years old and had everything to prove. He watches him the same way now. Behind them, both rides, Lancel Lannister, fair and young, carrying the wine flasks, already sweating despite the cool bite of the morning air. On Robert's right, Renly Baratheon keeps pace without enthusiasm. He is the youngest of the three brothers, handsome in a way that costs him nothing, and he has been here since first light and has smiled pleasantly at every story the king has told, and is beginning to run very low on pleasant. 7 feet if he was an inch, Robert is saying. He has been saying some version of this for the better part of an hour. Old Harwin thought the horse would break under me. I told him to shut his mouth and hand me my hammer. You should have seen his face. Renly holds his smile. He has the look of a man sitting at a very long dinner. The point is, Robert says, gesturing broadly, a man doesn't think in that moment. He acts. Either it is in him or it isn't. He glances sideways at his brother. You would understand if you had been at the bells. I was 5 years old, Renly says pleasantly. Robert is quiet for a moment. Well, yes. The silence that follows is the kind that has something in it. Renly waits it out with the patience of a man who has waited out worse, and when it has run long enough, he touches his spurs lightly to his horse's flanks. I'll ride ahead. See if the trackers have found anything. He does not ride ahead to find the trackers. He turns his horse back toward King's Landing, and he rides at a steady walk, and no one stops him, because he is the king's brother, and no one stops king's brothers, and because Robert does not bother to watch him go. Fill my cup, Robert says. Lancel rides forward. He brings the flask and begins to pour, and Robert holds the cup out without looking at it, his eyes on the line of trees where the mist hangs between the trunks and nothing moves. He has been on enough hunts to know the feeling of a morning that wants to turn into something. He brings the cup to his nose. He holds it there. The smell is wrong. Not rancid, not gone off. Heavier than it should be, sharper at the back of it, the way a fire burns differently when there is something extra in the wood. He has drunk enough wine in his life to know the difference between his usual sour red and a sour red that has been made into something else. He turns the cup slowly in his thick fingers and does not drink. He looks at Lancel. Lancel looks back at him. The boy is sweating, which Robert now notices he has been doing since they left the stables, a thin sheen of it across his forehead, despite the chill. His hands, holding the flask, are not quite steady. Robert pours the cup out into the leaves. "Fetch me water," he says. He does not look at Lancel when he says it. He does not look at Barristan. He keeps his face towards the trees, and his voice the same as it always is. And the morning continues. A long pause. "Of course, Your Grace." Lancel falls back. Barristan watches him go, and Robert does not, and neither of them says anything about it. The boar comes out of the brush without warning. It is enormous, black and low-slung, with tusks the colour of old bone, moving at a pace that looks almost lazy until the moment it does not. Robert's horse shies hard. Another man, a slower man, a drunk man, would have been thrown or gored before he gathered himself. Robert is none of those things this morning. He is off the horse and on his feet before the animal has finished shying, the hunting spear already coming forward, the body remembering things the mind has been trying to drink into silence for years. The boar hits the spear shaft with everything it has. For a terrible moment, the weight of it nearly carries Robert to the ground. He does not go down. He leans into the momentum and twists, and the great curved tusk rakes the side of his boot instead of opening his thigh. And when the animal staggers, he draws his dirk and drives it in behind the shoulder, once, twice, and then the boar is still. Robert stands over it. His chest heaves. His hands shake slightly, which only Barristan sees, and Barristan does not remark on it. The old knight dismounts and comes to stand beside him. "Well done, Your Grace," he says, after a moment. Robert looks at the boar for a long time. "It was something like that," he says. On the ride back, Robert asks Barristan once about Lancel. He does not look at Barristan when he asks, and Barristan does not say very much when he answers, and neither of them presses the matter. They ride in silence through the long afternoon, the boar hanging on its pole behind them, the trees thinning as the hills above the city come into view. Cersei Lannister stands at her window when the gate horns sound. She has been standing there for most of the afternoon, long enough that her feet ache, and her ladies have been exchanging looks behind her back. She is watching the road below and the distant tree line of the Kingswood, her golden hair lit by the failing light, her expression, the expression she keeps for moments she needs to control. She is very good at waiting. Robert rides through the gate into the courtyard. He is alive. The boar hangs dead on its pole, and he rides straight in the saddle, and he is not listing to one side the way a man does who has spent the day turning himself stupid with wine. He passes beneath her window without looking up, and Cersei turns from the glass. "Leave me," she says to her ladies. They leave. The door closes. She sits in the near dark, with the candles burning low, and thinks about what comes next. It is a long thought and a cold one, and she is still having it when Robert's voice comes echoing up from the great hall below, calling for food, calling for company, carrying the ordinary sound of a man who is alive and has no idea what is waiting for him. In the hall, Robert drops into his seat at the high table. Someone places a wine cup at his right hand without being asked. He wraps his thick fingers around it. He does not drink. He looks out across the length of the hall, and at the far end of it, standing at the door in his white armor, is Jaime Lannister. Gold-haired and still, watching with those bright green eyes that are the same shade as Cersei's. They hold each other's gaze across the room, the king's dark eyes and the Kingsguard's bright ones. Robert looks away first. He sets the cup down and calls for water instead, and the night comes in through the high windows, and somewhere in the Tower of the Hand, Ned Stark is still waiting. The Tower of the Hand smells of tallow and old parchment. It always has. Ned Stark has been in this room since morning, sitting at the long table with the papers spread before him. The accounts he has been piecing together over weeks, the notes in Jon Arryn's hand, the names he has gathered and the faces he has memorized. each one a dark-haired child in some corner of King's Landing who looks more like Robert Baratheon than Robert's own sons do. He has not eaten since midday. He has not been hungry. He hears Robert on the stairs before he sees him, the heavy, deliberate tread of a big man coming up slowly, the way a man climbs stairs when he is thinking rather than moving. Ned stays seated when the door opens. He does not stand. Robert comes in, sees him, and stops. The king looks at his hand for a long moment. He does not come further into the room. He stands with one hand on the doorframe, and his black beard still wet at the edges from the hunt, and Ned watches him read whatever is on Ned's face, and Robert's own face changes. The way a man's face changes when he understands that whatever is coming next has already been decided. He closes the door. "Tell me," he says. So Ned tells him. He starts with Jon Arryn, which is where it has to start. He tells Robert what Jon had been looking for in the weeks before he died. The questions Jon had been asking, the old book about the bloodlines of the great houses that Jon had been having read to him, the records he had been tracing carefully through the births of every natural child Robert had ever fathered across 7 kingdoms. All of them the same. All of them carrying the same dark hair, the same strong jaw, the same look of their father printed on them clear as a sigil on a shield. One bastard son after another, and not a golden hair among them. Then he tells Robert why Stannis left for Dragonstone. Robert says nothing. He is very still. Ned has known him for more than half their lives, and he knows what this stillness means. He has seen it before, twice, in the years when they were young men at the Eyrie, and something hard was coming, and Robert had not yet decided how to meet it. He is deciding now. Ned keeps talking. He tells Robert to think about Joffrey, to think about the boy's hair and eyes, to think about Myrcella and Tommen. Then he tells Robert to think about every bastard he has ever made and tell him what color their hair is. Robert is at the window. He is looking out at nothing. His hands are pressed flat on the sill. "Say it plainly," Robert says. "They are not yours," Ned says. "None of them." The silence that follows is very long. A candle gutters somewhere behind Ned. Down in the city, a dog barks twice and goes quiet. "Jaime," Robert says. His voice is barely there. "Yes, all 3. "Yes." Robert picks up the wine cup from the sill. Ned does not know when it arrived there, and he throws it. Not at Ned, not at the wall. He just throws it out into the middle of the room so it clangs off the stone floor and skitters into the shadow under the table. Then he grabs the edge of the table with both hands, and the whole thing shudders. Ned can see the knuckles go white even in the candlelight. He lets him have a moment. "How long?" Robert says. Not a question exactly. Jon Arryn believed it for some time before he died. I found the evidence 3 days ago. "How long has it been going on?" He is not asking about the investigation anymore. Ned takes a breath. "Since before Joffrey was born. Perhaps longer." The room is very quiet. The candles burn. Robert does not move. His hands are still gripping the edge of the table, and his shoulders are up near his ears, the way a man's shoulders go when he is holding something in that needs to go out. "I want Jaime," Robert says. "I want him out of his white cloak and in chains. Tonight." "Robert. And I want her in the—" "Robert." Ned stands. "You cannot go down there tonight. Listen to me. Jaime is Lord Commander. He has a sword, and he knows how to use it better than anyone alive. If you go through that door tonight without thinking it through, you are walking into a dark corridor with the most dangerous swordsman in the 7 kingdoms standing at the end of it. And you will have had no sleep, and you will be angry." He pauses. "You need Barristan. You need to be clear-headed, and you need Baratheon at your shoulder. Give this one night." Robert stares at him. The dark eyes are very bright. The grief in them is not something Ned expected. Not this fast, not this raw. He expected fury. He did not expect the look underneath it, the look of a man who has just been told that the last 17 years of his life have been built on a lie from the foundations up. "You told her first," Robert says. "Yes." "You knew. And you went to her first. You gave her warning." Ned holds his ground. "I gave her the chance that honor demanded. I told her what I had found, and I told her to leave the city with her children before I went to you. Because they are children, Robert, whatever she is, and I would not punish them without giving their mother the chance to take them somewhere safe." Robert looks at him for a long time. The rage shifts. It does not go away, but it moves, looking for the right place to land. "And she didn't leave," he says. "No. She stayed. Yes." Ned looks at him steadily. He waited all day to say the rest of this. He has been thinking about how to say it for 3 days, turning it over, trying to find the words that will land without breaking something that cannot be put back together. In the end, there are no such words. There is only the truth. "Robert, tell me about the wine on the hunt today." The stillness that comes over Robert's face is different from the ones that came before. Those were stillnesses of shock, of disbelief, of rage finding its shape. This one is different. This one is recognition. He already knew something was wrong with the wine. He has been carrying that knowledge all afternoon, the way you carry a stone in your boot without stopping to take it out. "She knew I was going to you," Ned says. "She knew I had 3 days on her, and she knew I intended to tell you. So she needed to make sure you wouldn't survive the hunt to hear it." Robert breathes in through his nose. He breathes out. He says nothing for a very long time. He was supposed to die this afternoon. That is the thought that sits in the room between them like a third person. He was supposed to come back from the hunt with a wound, some wound that would take him in the night, and Joffrey would be crowned before the week was out, and Ned's evidence would mean nothing because there would be no king left alive to hear it. He almost did. He poured a cup of wine out into the leaves of the kingswood and killed a boar with a clear head and rode home alive and walked up these stairs and sat in this chair, not knowing any of it until now. "Go to the door," Robert says. His voice is very quiet. It is the quietest Ned has ever heard it. Ned goes to the door and opens it. Baratheon Selmy is there, waiting in the corridor the way Baratheon always waits. Still as a statue, his white cloak without a crease, his eyes giving nothing away. Ned passes Robert's message in a low voice and steps back inside. Robert has not moved. He is standing at the window with his hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the city. "No one speaks of this tonight," he says. "Not a guard, not a servant, not your steward, not my steward. No one." He pauses. "Tomorrow morning we act." He does not say what acting means. He does not need to. Ned Stark knows, and in the corridor Baratheon Selmy knows, and below them in the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister knows. She has been sitting in the dark since she sent her ladies away, and she is thinking through the same calculations Robert is thinking through now, moving the same pieces on the same board, and the difference between them is simply this. Robert has Ned Stark standing in the room with him, and Cersei Lannister is alone. The candles in Cersei's chambers burn low by the time Jaime comes. She is not surprised. She knew he would come. She knew from the moment the gate horn sounded, and she watched Robert ride through the courtyard alive, that Jaime would not stand at his post all night, without knowing why everything felt wrong. She just hoped he would come before morning. He is still in his white armor when he slips through the door, and he closes it quietly behind him. The white of the Kingsguard's cloak catches what little light the candles still give, and his golden hair falls across his brow, and Cersei looks at him and does not let herself feel the thing she would prefer to feel right now. He went to the Tower of the Hand straight after supper, Jaime says. He hasn't come down. I know. Does he know? Cersei looks at the candles. The hand was there all day. Ned Stark has had this for weeks. He went to Robert's wife before he went to the king. She pauses. He gave me time to leave. Jaime is quiet for a moment. And you didn't leave? No. He crosses to the chair across from her and sits. He removes his gauntlets and sets them on the table between them, and he looks at her with those green eyes that are the same shade as hers, and his face is very still. The wine, he says. It is not a question. Cersei does not answer right away. She has been sitting with this since midday. Through the long afternoon, through supper she did not eat, through the hour when Robert's voice came echoing up from the hall below, and she understood from the sound of it that he knew nothing yet, and she had a little more time. She has turned over how to say this, and put it down, and turned it over again. Yes, she says. Jaime breathes out through his nose. He looks down at the gauntlets on the table and turns them once in his hands and sets them back. It didn't work, he says. No. And now he knows, or he is about to know. Yes. Jaime sits with it. That is something she has always understood about him. He does not waste time being outraged by things he cannot change. He is already thinking forward, already moving the pieces. He is not afraid, which is either his greatest quality or the one that will kill him. His hand comes up and he presses 2 fingers to his brow. The children, Cersei says. He looks up. Whatever happens to us, she says, the children are not part of this. Joffrey has done nothing. Myrcella has done nothing. Tommen is 7 years old. Her voice is steady. She will keep it steady. Whatever Robert decides to do, they are innocent. I know. I need you to understand that they come first, before anything else. I understand. She looks at him. He means it. I've sent a raven to my father, she says. He needs to know. If he moves quickly, he can't move quickly enough. Jaime says it without cruelty, but he says it flatly, because it is simply true. A raven takes days. His armies take weeks. Robert will not wait weeks. He pauses. What happens at dawn will be decided by who is already inside this city. Cersei knows this too. She has been sitting with it since the candles burned low and her ladies went to bed and the keep grew quiet. The pieces she has in King's Landing are not many. Jaime, the children, whatever she has built in this court across 17 years. It is not enough for a siege, and she knows it is not enough. What will you do? She asks him. Jaime is quiet. He looks at the gauntlets. Lord Commander of the King's Guard, sworn to protect the king. The same man he has sworn to protect is the man who will walk through that door at dawn to take his sister and their children wherever Robert decides they are going. The same oath that makes him the most powerful knight in the city makes him the most helpless. He has been here before. Not the same choice, not the same room, but this feeling all the same. His oath on one side, the people he loves on the other. No path through it that does not cost something he cannot get back. He drove a sword through Aerys the Mad with the city's future in his hands. He has never been entirely certain whether that was the right thing or simply the thing he did when he ran out of other options. I'll stand at my post, he says. I'll do my duty, and whatever comes next, I'll do what I have to." He looks at her. "That is all I can tell you." The knock comes from the servants' passage, the small door behind the wardrobe. One knock, too soft. One again. Cersei crosses to it before it finishes. She opens it, and there is no one there, only a square of folded paper on the floor, and the sound of quick, small feet already gone down the back passage. She unfolds it. 4 words in a neat, precise hand. She reads them once, touches the paper to the nearest candle flame, and watches it curl and go dark. Jaime watches her face. What does it say? "It says we have until dawn," Cersei says, "and no longer." She does not say who sent it. She does not need to. There is only one man in the Red Keep who has eyes in every passage and corridor, whose information is worth trusting in the small hours of a night like this, and they both know why he would send it, and what it costs him to send it, and what it means that he did. The night passes. Dawn comes through the eastern windows in grey and then gold, the city waking below by degrees. Kitchen yards, metal on stone, a cart on the cobbles, the ordinary sounds of a place that does not yet know that its shape has changed. Robert comes with Ned Stark at his left, and Barristan Selmy at his right, and 2 more white-cloaked knights behind them. He comes to Cersei's chamber door and knocks once, the kind of knock that is not asking, and when it opens, he stands in the corridor with the morning light behind him, and looks at her with eyes that have the cold in them. He does not shout. She has prepared herself for shouting across 17 years, for the red-faced fury she knows from him, the way his voice fills every room he enters. This is not that. This is what Robert looks like after the rage has finished, what remains when everything has burned down to ash and whatever lives underneath. "Come with me," he says. "Bring Jaime." The throne room holds the morning light in shafts through the high windows, and it is very quiet. Robert takes the iron throne and grips the armrests with both broad hands. Cersei stands before him. Jaime stands beside her in his white armor, gold-haired and straight, and neither of them speaks. Then the doors open. Joffrey walks in between 2 guards, 12 years old, and holding himself with a 12-year-old's idea of dignity, which is to say that he's trying very hard, and it shows. He has Cersei's golden hair, and Cersei's green eyes, and the set of her jaw when she is determined, and he has nothing of the man sitting above him on the Iron Throne, not one line or feature or shade of him. Robert looks at the boy. He looks at him for a long time, the way a man looks at a letter he has already read, checking his understanding of it. The throne room is very still. Then Robert nods once. "Take him back to his chambers," he says. "Keep him there." Joffrey looks to his mother. Cersei does not look back. The doors close, and the footsteps recede down the corridor, and the room is still again. Robert turns his eyes to Cersei, and he speaks 4 sentences to her. Ned Stark hears them, and Barristan Selmy hears them, and the 2 unnamed knights at the back of the room hear them. And what is in those 4 sentences will be between all of them as long as they live. Cersei says nothing when he finishes. There is nothing that can be said to 4 sentences like that. Robert turns his gaze to Jaime. "Barristan," he says. Barristan Selmy steps forward, and Jaime Lannister, Lord Commander of the King's Guard, does not reach for his sword. He stands very still, his hands at his sides, and his green eyes find Cersei's across the room, and they hold for one long breath. And then the arrest is made, formal and quiet, and it is done. Somewhere over the western hills, a raven is already flying with Cersei's words on its leg, carrying everything toward Casterly Rock, toward the old man who reads things like this with his face giving nothing away. and who will already be thinking, before the raven is even off his fist, about what comes next, and what it will cost, and whether the cost is one the Lannisters can afford to pay. His name is Tywin, and the answer will not take him long. Tywin Lannister reads the raven's message once. Then he reads it again. Then he sets it on the table in front of him and folds his hands on top of it, and sits very still in his chair. The way a man sits when he has just received news he already knew was possible and has been thinking about for some time. The solar at Casterly Rock looks out over the western sea. The sun is not yet fully up, and the water below catches the light in long, flat bands, and the gold mines do not yet show their dust on the morning air. It is quiet. Tywin Lannister is bald, with golden side whiskers going white at the edges, and his eyes are the pale green of old glass, and his face gives nothing away. It has not given anything away in some 30 years of politics and war and the management of a house that the realm fears for good reasons. He has 2 children under arrest in the Red Keep. He has 3 grandchildren who are bastards in law. He has a king who has every right to take all 5 of their heads. He unfolds his hands. He picks up a quill. When Kevin comes through the door a few minutes later, Tywin does not look up from what he is writing. "Close it," Tywin says. Kevin closes it. "Sit down." Kevin sits. He has been his brother's right hand for long enough that he does not need to be told what the letter means or what is coming next. He waits with the patience of a man who has spent his life executing other people's strategies and has made his peace with it. Tywin finishes the letter. He folds it and reaches for the wax and presses his seal ring into it, a motion as familiar as breathing. He sets it aside and picks up the next sheet. "Write to Lord Prester," he says. "Write to Lord Swift. Write to Lefford at the Golden Tooth. Tell them to begin moving men. Every available man, staged at the Tooth by the end of the fortnight. Full supplies for 6 weeks." He pauses. "Do not tell them why." Kevin picks up his own quill. "And the other houses?" "I will write to those personally." Tywin starts his second letter. The quill moves across the parchment with the quick, decisive strokes of a man who has written a great many letters ordering the movement of armies. The Bane Fort, the Crake Hall, Westerling. He does not look up. The full muster. Kevin finishes his note. The king. The king has arrested my children on charges of treason and incest. Tywin says it the way a man might read a number off a ledger, a fact to be acknowledged and entered into the account and acted upon. He has every legal right to execute them. He will not, because he is a sentimental man, and because executing the queen before her father's armies are within riding distance of his walls would be strategically imprudent. Robert Baratheon is many things. He is not a fool. A pause. But he will want leverage. He will want something to argue from. I intend to give him something to argue against first. Kevin says nothing. He writes. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Robert Baratheon sits on the Iron Throne. It does not suit him any better this morning than it ever has. The throne was made by a man who believed a king should never be comfortable in his seat, and Aerys had believed it too, and so had every Targaryen before him, and so apparently had the throne itself, which is why it cuts. Robert grips the armrests and does not cut himself, and looks out at the small council chamber below, where his councillors have taken their seats and are waiting for him to speak. Ned Stark stands at his right. Renly Baratheon sits at the far end of the table, 21 years old and looking out at the room with the careful attention of a man taking inventory. Grand Maester Pycelle is in his chair, very old and very white-haired, and very interested in his own hands. Petyr Baelish has one elbow on the table, his chin on his knuckle, watching everything the way a man watches a game he is not sure he has been invited to play. Varys has folded his hands in his sleeves and is saying nothing and seeing everything. The Lord Commander's chair is empty. "The Queen is under guard," Robert says. "The Lord Commander of the King's Guard has been relieved of his post pending trial. 3 children, currently residing in the Red Keep, have no legal claim to the throne, pending formal proceedings." He pauses. "I need a council to function." No one speaks. The empty chair is very present. "The children," Ned says. "Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen." He keeps his voice level. "They are innocent in this." "I know they are innocent," Robert says. "I said that. They stay in the Red Keep, under guard, but comfortable." He looks at the table. "They are not to be harmed." Renly leans back in his chair. He has the easy manner of a man at court, the kind that comes from being charming your entire life and never having to work at it. But his eyes, when they settle on Robert, are doing something more precise than easy. "There is a question of succession," Renly says. Robert looks at him. "If Joffrey is stripped of his claim," Renly says, pleasantly and very clearly, "the succession falls to the next male Baratheon of the blood." He lets that sit for a moment. "That would be Stannis." The room is quiet. Not the quiet of people who have nothing to say. The quiet of people thinking very quickly about how much they want to say it. Stannis Baratheon, Lord of Dragonstone. The man who has no charm and no warmth and no tolerance for the ordinary failings of ordinary men. The man who will enforce the law to the letter, regardless of what the law costs in human terms. Pycelle's hands are still folded on the table, and his face is very neutral. Petyr Baelish's chin has come off his knuckle, and he is studying the grain of the table. Varys is watching Robert. "I know who Stannis is," Robert says. "Of course," Renly says. "I only want to be sure we are all clear on what we are discussing." Robert stands from the throne. The chamber gets smaller when Robert is on his feet in it, which is a thing he has always known and occasionally uses. "Send a raven to Dragonstone," he says. "Tell my brother to come." He looks around the room. "We have a great deal to discuss. Are there other matters of immediate urgency?" Petyr Baelish smooths his sleeve. "The treasury will need to be assessed. If Lord Tywin should decide that the current situation requires him to call in the loans owed to House Lannister. Then we will address that when it happens," Robert says. "Send the raven." The council ends. Men file out into the corridors of the Red Keep, and behind them the Lord Commander's chair sits empty, and the morning light falls across the long table, and Petyr Baelish is the last to leave. He does not hurry. He never hurries. He walks out of the council chamber and along the corridor with the mild, unhurried expression of a man who has just learned exactly which way the wind is blowing and what it is going to blow down, and who has already begun to think about what grows in the empty ground afterward. Far to the north, on the road between King's Landing and Castle Black, Tyrion Lannister is trying to get comfortable on a horse that does not suit him when a rider comes at a gallop out of the south with a sealed letter. The seal is not one he recognizes. He breaks it anyway, because letters addressed to Tyrion Lannister by name in the middle of the King's Road do not arrive by accident. He reads it in the grey morning light, holding it up to the sky, and when he finishes, he sits very still on his horse for a long moment. His sister is under arrest. His brother is under arrest. His father is going to march. Tyrion Lannister is 25 years old, and a dwarf, and the youngest of 3 Lannister children. And of those 3, he is the only one currently free, which is not a situation he ever expected to be in. He folds the letter. He tucks it inside his coat. He turns his horse south. He does not know yet what he will find when he gets there. He knows that his family is very good at making enemies, and very bad at being stopped. And he knows that he is not his family, or not entirely. And he knows that whatever is coming next is going to require someone to think clearly. Thinking clearly is the one Lannister gift that does not require a sword. He rides south, and the morning gets on with itself around him. The painted table fills the center of the war room at Dragonstone, a massive carving of Westeros in stone that Aegon the Conqueror's men made to plan the conquest of a kingdom they had never seen. The stone rivers and stone mountains and stone castles are worn smooth in places by generations of hands tracing campaigns that won, and campaigns that lost, and campaigns that settled nothing. Stannis Baratheon stands at its eastern edge and reads the Raven's message once, and then reads it again, and then reads it a third time, because Stannis Baratheon does not trust good fortune, and the message says things he has been waiting a long time to read. Robert is alive. The treason is exposed. Jaime Lannister is under arrest. He sets the letter down on the stone where King's Landing is carved. He looks at it. He does not smile. Stannis Baratheon is 34 years old, lean and straight-backed, with close-cropped dark hair and a square jaw that he sets and holds the way other men set their shoulders before a fight. He does not smile at things that please him. What his face does instead is go still in a particular way, the stillness of a man who has been carrying a heavy thing for a long time and has just been told he can set it down. He was right. He told Robert's people what he had found. He sent letters and received silence in return. He retreated to Dragonstone because the alternative was remaining in King's Landing and watching Cersei Lannister move through the court with the knowledge that she and her brother had built a false succession around 3 children who were not the king's, while no one did anything about it. And Stannis Baratheon has never been able to watch the wrong thing happen without making his feelings about it exhaustively clear to everyone in the room. He picks up his quill. The letter he writes is brief. He tells Robert what the law requires. Cersei Lannister attempted the murder of the king and committed treason across 17 years of a false succession. Jaime Lannister violated his Kingsguard oath and committed incest. The law is plain on both. He writes that the 3 children have no claim to the throne and should be removed from court and fostered in houses that can be trusted to keep them from mischief, or, in the case of the eldest, the Night's Watch may one day serve. He tells Robert he is coming. He does not ask whether that is what Robert wants. He does not ask anything. He sends for his captain, and below on the black stone docks of Dragonstone, the fleet begins to prepare. Meanwhile, at the gates of King's Landing, a guard with a spear is looking down at a dwarf on a horse. "Name," the guard says. "Tyrion Lannister," the dwarf says, pleasantly. He is 25 years old, with a large head and mismatched eyes, one green and one black, and the kind of face that has learned long ago to lead with humor, because it costs less than dignity in the long run. "Son of Lord Tywin, I have ridden 3 days without meaningful sleep, and I would appreciate not spending my homecoming in this particular spot." The guard finds this unamusing. He summons his captain. The captain summons a knight. The knight summons another knight. Eventually, Tyrion Lannister is escorted through the city with more armed company than he usually keeps, though the company is less convivial. Robert is in the throne room when they bring Tyrion in, and he looks across the length of the hall at him with the expression of a man trying to read something written in a hand he does not quite know. "Did you know?" Robert asks. Tyrion does not look away. He has spent 25 years being looked at and judged for things he did not do, and the habit of looking back directly is not one that leaves a man easily. No, he says. I did not. Robert studies him. Then he nods, once at the knight beside Tyrion, and the hands leave Tyrion's shoulders. You're being watched, Robert says. I imagine everyone in this building is being watched at the moment, Tyrion says. I will try not to do anything worth reporting. Ned Stark finds him in one of the lower corridors not long after, walking with the stiff, careful gait of a man who has been in the saddle too long. They fall into step together, as if by agreement, moving through the corridor past guards who say nothing. What will you do? Ned asks. Tyrion considers this carefully. It is a genuine question, and Ned is a man who asks genuine questions, which is rarer than it should be. I have not decided, Tyrion says. My father is going to march. My sister will stand trial. My brother will spend time in a cell. I am the only Lannister in this city who is currently neither imprisoned nor besieging it. What would you do in that position? Ned looks at him. The hand of the king has grey eyes and a long face, and the unhurried manner of a man who takes questions seriously, even when they are not entirely meant to be answered. I would decide who I was, Ned says, and then I would act accordingly. Tyrion is quiet for a moment. That is, he says at last, the most useful and the most useless piece of advice I have received in some years. He pauses. Thank you. They part at the turn of the stair. Ned goes up. Tyrion goes down, which is where the good thinking is usually done. Meanwhile, in her chambers, Cersei sits with her son. Joffrey stands at the window, looking out at the courtyard with his arms crossed and his jaw set, and his golden hair catching the flat midday light. He has been standing there since the guard was posted outside the door, working himself up to something. And Cersei knows the signs because she has watched him work himself up to things his whole life. They cannot keep us here forever, he says. No, she says, but they can keep us here long enough for it to matter, so we will be patient. I would rather. Joffrey. She says it quietly, without heat, the way she says things when she means them most. Look at me. He turns. He is 12 years old, and he has her eyes and her colouring and the look she has seen in the mirror for 32 years. And underneath all of that, something that is not her and not Jaime. Something that came in its own. And it is looking at her now with barely concealed impatience. Your grandfather is coming, she says. His armies are coming. We wait. We give them nothing. We say nothing that can be overheard. That is all we have to do. I would rather fight, he says. I know, she says. I am asking you not to. He looks at her for a moment longer, then turns back to the window. Outside, the guards stand their posts, and the afternoon passes, and the city continues below as if nothing has changed, because most of it does not yet know that anything has. At midday, Renly Baratheon rides out through the river gate with 6 men and a quiet manner. He stops at the Tower of the Hand first, and tells Ned that he is going to Storm's End to see to his garrison and bring the Stormland's lords to order. That someone should, and that he has the king's leave to do it. Ned listens to this, nods carefully, and watches him go with the particular expression of a man who believes what he is hearing, and does not entirely believe what he is hearing in equal measure. Renly is 21 years old and handsome and quick, and he is thinking faster than anyone in the Red Keep understands, because no one in the Red Keep is currently paying attention to the youngest Baratheon brother when they have 2 older ones to worry about. This is something Renly has understood since childhood. He has always done his best thinking in rooms that are too busy looking elsewhere. He rides south. He does not look back. The harbour watch calls down from the walls as the sun is beginning to slide westward. Sails on the water, coming up from the south. Many sails, dark ones, moving with the particular purposefulness of a fleet that knows exactly where it is going. Robert stands on the walls with Ned at his shoulder and watches the ships come in. He says nothing for a long time. The fleet resolves itself out of the afternoon haze, and even from this distance the ships look like their commander, direct, unhesitating, carrying nothing unnecessary. "He came," Robert says. "You sent for him," Ned says. "I know." A pause. "I wasn't certain he would." He watches the fleet sail in, dark against the blue of the bay, and below him the city watches too, and none of them entirely understand yet what the arrival of Stannis Baratheon means. Robert is beginning to. It means the question of succession has stopped being theoretical. It means the law has a face and a fleet and a square jaw and 34 years of being right about everything, and it is sailing into his harbour whether he is ready for it or not. Stannis Baratheon arrives at the Red Keep in the late afternoon, and by the time the sun has set there is a war council in the great hall, and Robert Baratheon has not drunk anything since midday, and is beginning to feel it. The hall holds the evening light in a way it never holds the morning light, the torches along the walls throwing long shadows up into the rafters, and the table at its centre feels too small for what has been placed on it. Robert sits at one end. Stannis stands at the other, because Stannis Baratheon does not sit when he is making a point, and he is currently in the process of making several. Ned Stark sits midway between them, which is not a comfortable position. The Lord Commander's chair is empty. Renly's chair is empty too, and no word has come south from him since midday, and the two empty chairs sit there, saying the things they are not saying. "The law is not complicated," Stannis says. His voice is flat and precise, a chisel working stone. Cersei Lannister conspired to murder the king. She presented bastard children as legitimate heirs to the throne. These are capital crimes. Jaime Lannister violated every vow he swore as a member of the Kingsguard and committed incest with the Queen. That is also a capital crime. The law on both is plain. "I know what the law says," Robert says. "Then you know what the law requires." Robert's hands are on the table. He presses them flat against the wood and does not move them. She is the mother of 3 children who had no hand in any of this. Whatever she did, they are innocent. I will not execute their mother in front of them. "You executed traitors in front of their children before," Stannis says. "You called it justice then. That was different. It is always different," Stannis says. "When it is someone else's children, it is justice. When it is the Queen's children, it is sentiment. That is the flaw in you, Robert. It has always been the flaw in you." The silence after that is taut as a bowstring. Robert looks at his brother from across the table, and Stannis looks back at him, and neither of them looks away. And it is not the first time they have had this particular argument, though it is the first time the stakes of it have been quite this high. "Your coldness," Robert says, "has always been the flaw in you. A man who cannot move, people cannot lead them. A man who is moved too easily by people cannot command them," Stannis says, "and you have never been able to tell the difference." Ned sets his hands on the table. "There is a more immediate problem," he says. Both men look at him. "Tywin Lannister is moving," Ned says. "A raven came this morning from a merchant travelling east from the Westerlands. Troops in the field, moving toward the Golden Tooth. Not a muster yet, but the beginning of one." He looks from Robert to Stannis and back. We do not have weeks to decide what to do about the Queen and her brother. We have however long it takes his armies to reach the Riverlands. Robert stands. He moves to the window and looks out at the city below, the torches in the streets, the ordinary business of a place that does not know it may soon have a Lannister army marching toward it. He puts one hand on the wall and stands there. "What do I have?" he asks, not to anyone in particular. He already knows the answer. He is saying it aloud to hear how it sounds when someone says it plainly. "The household guard," Ned says. "The Crown Lands lords, Rosby and Stokeworth, and the rest of the small houses sworn directly to the Crown. They'll answer a call, but their levies are small, and their men are not soldiers of the first quality." He pauses. The city watch. Their commander's loyalty is uncertain, and the watch has never been built to fight a field battle in any case. Another pause, and this one costs something. Renly has the Stormlands bannerman. He rode south this morning and has sent no word back. Robert does not move from the window. The city lights are coming on below in the dark. He has built 17 years of rule on the understanding that the realm's strength was his by right, that the banners would come when he raised them, that no one would ever truly challenge him, because he was the man who won the trident and sat the throne. He is beginning to understand that none of that means quite what he thought it meant. "And I have my fleet," Stannis says, "and Dragonstone's garrison." "You have the fleet and the garrison," Robert says. "Yes." "And if the North answers?" "Winterfell is 15 days away at speed," Ned says. "Robb is 15 years old, and will hold the seat and call the banners the moment a raven reaches him. They will come. They will simply not come quickly." He does not add what they all know, that the North is very far away, and Tywin Lannister's armies are not. "The Riverlands will hedge," Robert says. "They always hedge." "Yes. The Vale." He says it without much hope. "I would not count on the Vale," Ned says, and leaves it there. Robert turns from the window. His face has the look it has when he is making a decision he does not entirely like, which is most of them. "Send ravens," he says. "Winterfell, River Run, the Eyrie, for whatever good it does us." He looks at Ned. "And draft the formal call to banners. Every lord of the realm. It goes out tonight." Stannis says nothing. He has said what he came to say. He will stand on the ground he has staked out and wait for Robert to come to him, because Stannis Baratheon has waited before and is prepared to wait again. The teeth in his jaw work slowly, a grinding that Ned has come to recognize as the sound of Stannis enduring something he cannot change. The council ends. The men in the room begin to gather their papers and go about their business. And Tyrion Lannister, who has been standing at the back of the room since the middle of the proceedings, comes forward. Robert sees him. He does not look surprised. "What do you want?" Robert says. It is not unfriendly. It is just direct, the way Robert is direct when he is tired. "One favor," Tyrion says. "Let me speak to my sister before any trial begins. Let me speak to her under escort, with guards present, with whatever conditions you require. But let me speak to her." Robert looks at him for a long moment. He looks at Ned, who gives him nothing in either direction, which is what a hand does when the king has to make his own choice. "Fine," Robert says. "One conversation. Guards in the room." They escort Tyrion to Cersei's chambers, 2 guards inside the door and 1 in the corridor, and Cersei Lannister is sitting at her table when he enters, her golden hair dressed, and her back straight, looking as though she is receiving a guest rather than a prisoner receiving a visitor. Whatever she has been through in the last day, she has decided how she will carry it. Tyrion notes this. It is a quality he has always understood about her, even when he has not admired it. "Tyrion," she says. "Cersei." He takes the chair across from her. The guards stare at the wall. "You look well for a woman who arranged to have the king killed yesterday." "He isn't dead," she says. "He isn't dead. He has called his banners. Stannis is here, and father's armies are at least 2 weeks from the Riverlands." He watches her face. The math is not favorable. "Your father's armies," she says, "are the finest in the realm. Robert has the north, which is far away, and a brother who would rather be right than liked. 2 weeks is not so long." "Robert will be ready for them in 2 weeks, Tyrion says. Cersei looks at him across the table with those green eyes that are the same green as Jaime's eyes, and as Joffrey's eyes, and as the eyes Tyrion has never had. And she says, quietly and without particular emphasis, "That is why fathers have sons." Tyrion sits with this for a moment. He nods once. He stands. He thanks the guards for their patience, and he walks back out into the corridor and stands there for a moment in the torchlight, thinking about what she means and whether he can do anything about what she means, and whether he is willing to try. He is a Lannister. The question of what that requires of him has always been more complicated than people assume. Storm's End rises from the cape at the southern edge of the Stormlands, like a single clenched fist against the sky. It is the oldest Baratheon seat, and the most unbreakable one, a round drum tower of unbreakable stone said to be enchanted by Bran the Builder against storm and siege, and the storms that have battered it for centuries have done nothing to it except make it look more permanent by comparison. The sea below it is never still. The narrow sea and the summer sea meet in the channel beneath the walls, and the sound of it never quite goes away, even in the great hall, where Renly Baratheon is standing after a hard 3-day ride and looking at his inheritance with the eyes of a man who has made a decision. He is 21 years old. He has been Lord of Storm's End for some years. He has stood in this hall before. He has never stood in it like this. He calls for a candle and sits at the Lord's table and writes a raven not to King's Landing, but to Highgarden. The letter does not need to be long. Practical people do not need many words when the words are the right ones, and the Tyrells of Highgarden are, above everything, practical. He tells them what has happened at court. He tells them what he believes is coming. He tells them what he proposes and why it serves their interests to say yes before anyone else has made the same proposal. He names Loras at the end of the letter, because that name is a private thing and expensive to use. But it is also the right name, and Renly Baratheon has always understood the difference between sentiment and strategy, even when they point in the same direction. He seals the letter. He sends for the Maester. Meanwhile, at the mountain pass in the western hills where the road descends from the Westerlands into the country above the Riverlands, the Lannister vanguard is moving east. They move quickly, which is a quality of Tywin Lannister's armies, that men who have fought against them learn first and remember longest. The banners of Casterly Rock are packed tight along the column, with no straggling and no waste, and the Golden Tooth Fortress watches them descend from its heights with the impassive patience of old stone. The outriders are already 2 hours ahead of the main column and moving fast. The word reaches King's Landing within 2 days. Not the word about Tywin, which arrives separately, and which they were already expecting, but a second word from a loyal lord on the eastern cape of the Stormlands, who has noticed what Renly Baratheon is doing at Storm's End, and who has decided, carefully, that King Robert should know about it before it gets further along. Robert Baratheon receives both ravens on the same morning, in the throne room, with Ned at one side and Stannis at the other. He reads the second one twice. He told me he was going to see to his garrison, Robert says. Silence. He said it to my hand's face, Robert says. He said it was the king's business he was riding south to do. No one responds. The silence in the throne room is the silence of men who have nothing useful to say and know it. Stannis's jaw sets. He has been holding something in his mouth since the word arrived, and the thing he is holding is true and accurate and terrible to say, and it will not help anything to say it. He says it anyway, because Stannis Baratheon has never been able to leave the true thing unsaid, which is one of the reasons no one has ever liked him very much. I told you, Stannis says. 3 days ago, I told you to keep him close. I know what you told me, Robert says. He has not raised the Stormlands for the crown. He is raising them for himself. That is what Renly does. That is what he has always done, since he was old enough to understand that charm is a form of power, and he had more of it than either of us. Stannis is not saying it with satisfaction. He is saying it with the flat accuracy of a report. He will ally with whoever can give him the most, and he is currently approaching the Tyrells. Robert is quiet for a long time. 2 fronts, he says, finally. Tywin from the west and Renly from the south. If Renly secures the Reach, Stannis says, yes. The realm is choosing its ground in the days that follow. From the north, a raven arrives with the grey wolf seal of House Stark, addressed in a hand that is still finding its authority, but does not show doubt. Robb Stark, acting Lord of Winterfell, 15 years old, writes that the northern banners will be called and the north will march when it is ready. He does not add any qualifications. He does not say if he is ready. He simply says, the north is coming. Ned reads this and looks at the fire for a while. The Riverland's lords send careful letters full of language that means they are watching and weighing and have not decided. The letter from the Eyrie does not come at all. Lisa Arryn, Lady of the Eyrie, does not reply to the king's call, which is an answer of its own kind, and everyone at court reads it correctly. Tyrion Lannister has been spending his days in King's Landing the way he has always spent time in places where he has no official standing and limited welcome. He watches and he listens, and he stays close to the rooms where things are decided, because he has spent 25 years learning that the world closes its doors to the obvious threats and leaves the small ones out of its accounting. He has a particular view of Pater Baelish from the small council chamber, and he has been using it. He watches where Baelish's eyes go when intelligence arrives. He watches who Baelish speaks to in the corridors afterward, and for how long, and how those people look when they walk away. He is 30 years old, and the master of coin, and the man who arranged Jon Arryn's murder through his wife. And almost no one who matters currently understands the last part of that, which is itself a form of power that Tyrion finds both impressive and alarming. He brings what he has assembled to Ned Stark. I can't prove this, Tyrion says. Not the way you would want proof, but hear it anyway. Ned looks at him without impatience, which is itself a kind of courtesy Tyrion doesn't take for granted. Go on, he says. Littlefinger is talking to both sides. Not openly, through enough people in between that it is difficult to trace. He has made contact with men who can reach Tywin's camp, and I believe he has done the same with whatever lines Renly is building toward the Reach. Whatever emerges from this war, whoever controls the throne when it is done, Littlefinger will have made himself useful to them. He pauses. He's not picking a winner. He is making himself necessary to any possible winner. And that is more dangerous than picking the wrong side, because a man who picks the wrong side is just a traitor. A man who does what Littlefinger does is something harder to deal with. Ned looks at him. The grey eyes are quiet. What do you want me to do with this? Watch him, Tyrion says. Not me. He will manage me. Find someone he doesn't think to manage, and watch him. That evening, Robert Baratheon is alone in his solar with the warhammer in his hands. He has been sitting with it for some time. It is heavier than it used to be, or he is different from the man who found it light. He turns it over once, feeling the familiar balance of the head against the haft, the particular weight of a weapon he has carried since he was a young man who believed that every problem in the world had a physical solution if you were strong enough and direct enough to apply it. He has been king for 17 years. He has learned that very few problems have physical solutions. He has also learned that the ones that do tend to be the ones he is best equipped to handle. He is Robert Baratheon. He was the demon of the trident before he was a king, and he will be the demon of the trident now. Tywin Lannister can march all the way to the Riverlands. Robert will ride out and meet him, and one of them will see what the other is made of, and it will not be a long argument. He goes to find Ned Stark. There are preparations to begin. Robert Baratheon rides out of King's Landing on a grey morning with a column of men behind him, and the city watching from its walls and gates like a crowd at a joust. There are 2,000 of them in the column, household guard and crown lands knights and mounted men who answered the king's call in time to be useful, and they ride in good order through the gate and onto the road heading west, and the people of King's Landing who come out to see them go are quiet in a way that crowds are not usually quiet. Robert rides at the head of it. He is fat. He knows it. He has known it for a long time. His horse is the largest they could find in the royal stable, and it carries him without complaint, which is what good horses do, and his black armor has been let out twice in the last decade, which is what good armorers do. He has his warhammer in the saddle loop, the same one that killed Rhaegar Targaryen in the waters of the Ruby Ford 15 years and a lifetime ago, and the men riding behind him can see it there. Stannis stands at the gate and watches him go. They have not exchanged many words this morning. Stannis will hold the city. He has held harder things with less. If Renly moves on the city before I come back, Robert says, leaning down from the saddle, you have my authority to deal with it as you see fit. Stannis looks at him. And what would you have me do? Stannis says. If dealing with it as I see fit displeases you when you return? Robert considers this for a moment. Then I'll tell you so when I'm back, he says, and you can explain your reasoning, and we will argue about it the way we always argue about everything. He straightens. Try not to level the city. It is the closest to humor they have managed in days. Stannis does not smile, which is expected, but his jaw unclenches slightly, which from Stannis is the same thing. Robert turns his horse west, and the column follows. Ned Stark rides a length behind him, as a hand should, close enough to speak, and far enough to give the king the appearance of riding alone. The road from King's Landing west runs through the lower hills before rising toward the mountains that separate the Crownlands from the Riverlands, and they cover the first leagues in good time. The sky is grey, and the fields on either side of the road are the deep green of late autumn, and the silence between them is comfortable, which is something Ned has always valued about Robert, that they can say nothing to each other for an hour and have it mean something other than distance. Tell me about Tywin, Robert says, eventually. You know as much about Tywin as I do, Ned says. Tell me anyway. Ned thinks about this. He will not want to fight you in open battle if he can help it. You are the king. Killing a king in the field is a different thing than executing a traitor in the capital, and he knows that better than anyone. He will try to bring you to terms. And if I don't want terms, then he will fight, and he will fight well because he always fights well, and he will have more men. A pause, but he will not want to. Robert is quiet for a moment. Good, he says. I want to. They ride on, 3 days west of King's Landing, near the lower hills above the Riverlands. The outriders make first contact. It is not a battle. It is what happens before a battle, when two armies are still feeling out the distance between them, and neither commander wants to commit before he understands the ground. Robert's vanguard meets Lannister outriders in the grey morning light on a hillside above a brook, and there is a brief and vicious exchange of arrows and men on horseback, and then both sides fall back to their respective lines and report to their commanders. Robert receives the report with Barristan at his shoulder. The old knight is in his white cloak even here, which Ned has stopped finding remarkable and has started finding simply characteristic, and he listens to the count of Lannister outriders with the expressionless attention of a man cataloguing what he knows. "They're close," Robert says. 3 leagues at most, Barristan says. "Good." Robert looks out over the hillside, where the morning mist is still burning off the lower ground. He is 200 miles from the city, and his knees ache, and he cannot ride as long each day as he used to, but he is here, and there is something in the air of the field that the throne room has never had, and that he has been missing for 17 years without entirely being able to name it. His men look at him differently out here. Here he is not the fat king behind his walls. Here he is the man who rode at the trident. He is the demon of the trident. He is going to remind Tywin Lannister of that. Meanwhile, in the tent city behind the Lannister lines, a rider reaches the command post at speed and delivers his report. Tywin Lannister listens to it without expression. He asks 2 questions. He nods once. He dismisses the rider. He walks to the map table and looks at it for a long time. Robert Baratheon is in the field, personally. This changes the calculation in ways that Tywin Lannister doesn't like. An army can be defeated. A king can be captured. The difference between those 2 outcomes, a defeated army without its king, or a living king taken on the field, is the difference between a costly campaign and a catastrophe that follows the Lannister name for generations. A dead king in battle is worse than either. You can explain a defeated army. You cannot explain a dead king. He tells his captains to hold position and not advance. He wants to know more before he moves. Back in King's Landing, Stannis Baratheon receives Varys' intelligence in the small council chamber, with the patience of a man who has been waiting for the worst possible news long enough that it no longer surprises him. The intelligence is this. Renly has written to Highgarden. The Reach has answered. There is an army forming in the south. Stormlands and Reach bannermen both, marching under Renly's orders, and it is moving north toward King's Landing at a pace that will bring it within striking distance inside a fortnight. Stannis looks at the table. He looks at the map. He calculates 2 fronts, Robert in the west with Tywin, Renly in the south with the Reach, King's Landing in the middle, held by Stannis and a fleet and the Crown Lands garrison. He sat in Storm's End for a year on near nothing and held it against a better supplied enemy. He can hold this city. He picks up his quill. The letter he writes to Renly contains 3 sentences, each of them direct, none of them ambiguous. It tells Renly to stand his forces and swear his renewed loyalty to King Robert before Stannis is required to name him formally as a traitor to the realm. It tells him Robert will pardon him. It tells him this offer has a time limit. He seals the letter and sends it south. In Cersei's chambers, The evening candles are already lit. Joffrey stands at the window, as he so often does now, watching the courtyard, wearing his impatience like armor. He is 12 years old, and he has been told to wait for a week, and the waiting has not improved him. "He has gone," Joffrey says. He means Robert. "I know," Cersei says. "Where?" "West, to fight your grandfather." Joffrey is quiet for a moment. "Will grandfather win?" he asks. Cersei looks at him. She thinks about how to answer this. She thinks about what answer will do him the most good and the least harm, and which of those considerations should be weighted more heavily. "Your grandfather," she says, "has never lost. Not when it mattered." "Then we will win," Joffrey says. "There is no alternative," Cersei says. At the other end of the Red Keep, Tyrion Lannister finds Grand Maester Pycelle alone in his chambers, surrounded by his scrolls and his candles, and the particular stillness of a very old man who has learned to make himself small and quiet in dangerous times. "Grand Maester," Tyrion says, pulling up a chair. Pycelle regards him with the wary expression of a tortoise, considering whether to withdraw. He is 82 years old, and has served as Grand Maester through 3 kings and 2 regencies, and has survived all of them by being indispensable and harmless in roughly equal parts. He recognizes a Lannister when he sees one, and he knows that the times when Lannisters come to him with open faces and requests for conversation are the times to be most careful. "Lord Tyrion," Pycelle says. "I'm going to tell you something useful," Tyrion says, "and you're going to tell me something useful in return. That is the arrangement." He sets his elbows on his knees. "I'll go first." Pycelle looks at him for a long moment. Then he sets his pen down. He folds his hands. He says very carefully, "What would you like to know?" Grand Maester Pycelle does not lie quickly. That is the thing Tyrion has noticed about him over the years. He lies slowly, with great care, choosing each word the way a man chooses footing on wet stone, and the care itself is the tell. A man who tells the truth does not need to be so careful. So when Tyrion says, "When did my sister's raven leave for Casterly Rock?" and Pycelle takes a very long breath before answering, Tyrion already knows the shape of what is coming. "I'm afraid I don't know what raven you mean," Pycelle says. "The one that left the night the king returned from the Kingswood," Tyrion says. "The one that told my father everything." Pycelle folds his hands on the table. "Lord Tyrion, I have a great many ravens passing through my rookery on any given—" "Pycelle!" Tyrion's voice does not rise. He has learned not to raise his voice in these conversations. Raised voices give men like Pycelle room to retreat into wounded dignity. "I am not going to arrest you. I am not going to report you to the king. I am going to ask you a simple question, and you are going to answer it. And then I am going to ask you a more complicated question, and you are going to answer that one too. This is the arrangement I described." The old master looks at him for a long time. The candles are burning low. Somewhere outside the window the city is quiet for once, and the quiet feels like pressure. "The raven left before dawn," Pycelle says. "Your sister brought it herself. She wrote the message in her own hand. She asked me to ensure it went out without being logged." Tyrion nods. "And you obliged her?" "She is the queen." "She is the queen," Tyrion agrees pleasantly. "Now, here is the more complicated question. My father is marching south with somewhere between 12 and 20,000 men. The king is riding west with 2,000. What does my father know about the king's route?" Pycelle is very still. "She told him," Tyrion says. "She told him which road Robert would take. She told him where to meet him." I don't know what she... Pycelle. The word is flat and final. My father is going to put his army across the Gold Road and wait for the king to ride into it. 2,000 men against 12,000 on a road with nowhere to turn. She has arranged for my father to kill the king. He pauses. I want to know how many days' march Robert has on Tywin right now. The silence stretches. Then Pycelle says, very quietly, 3 days, perhaps 4. Tyrion sits back on his heels and thinks, 3 days is not enough. 2,000 men is not enough. And he is still in King's Landing, which is the wrong end of the problem. He stands. He thanks Pycelle for his time, which he does not mean, and he goes out through the door and down the corridor, and he is already calculating before he reaches the stairs. He needs a horse. He needs a horse, and a message sent west, and he needs to think about whether there is anything in the world that would make Jaime choose the king over their father. He suspects there is not. He suspects the only thing that might have changed Jaime was the conversation he had with Ned Stark through an iron door, and he does not know what that conversation was, and he will not know in time to use it. What he knows is this. There is a young Lannister riding south from Casterly Rock who is not yet decided. His name is Tyrion, and the question of what that requires of him has always been more complicated than people assume. He goes to find a horse. Meanwhile, at the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister sits in the quiet of the apartments she has not left since the night the king came home. Her windows look out over the harbour, and Stannis Baratheon's ships are still there, their lights steady on the water. She has been counting them since they arrived. She knows how many there are. Joffrey has not come to see her. She sent for him twice, and was told he was with his uncle Stannis, which is the kind of sentence that lands in the chest like something cold. She does not know what Stannis is saying to her son, and she cannot find out, and the not knowing is almost worse than knowing would be. She sent the raven. She told Tywin everything. The road Robert would take, the size of his escort, the fact that he was riding with no Kingsguard except Ser Barristan. She told him where to wait, and when to be there, and she said nothing about what should happen afterward, because he already knows. Tywin has always already known. The part she did not tell him is that Jaime is still in King's Landing. She sent him a second raven that night, shorter, with only 3 words, and she does not know if it arrived. She pours herself wine and does not drink it, and watches the ships. Far to the west, Jaime Lannister walks through the city at night without his armor. He has not worn the white since he left the Red Keep, and he does not plan to put it on again tonight. He is wearing the dark traveling clothes he keeps for the rare times he wants to move without being recognized, and the streets of King's Landing are dark and narrow and wet from an afternoon rain, and he is thinking about what Ned Stark said to him through an iron door. He has been thinking about it since yesterday. The Lord of Winterfell did not say anything he did not already know. He said it clearly and without anger, and that was the part that caught at something in Jaime's chest. He has been told by a great many people over the years what kind of man he is. Most of them say it with contempt. Ned Stark said it with something that was almost sorrow, as if he genuinely found the waste of it regrettable, and that is harder to dismiss. His father is marching south. He knows this the way he knows everything about Tywin, not because anyone told him, but because it is what Tywin would do, and Jaime has spent enough of his life reading that man to know the shape of his decisions before they are made. Cersei sent a raven. Tywin received it. Tywin is marching, and Robert is riding west. Jaime stops at the edge of a fountain. The water is dark in the night. He looks at his own reflection for a moment, just the shape of it, the pale smear that might be his face. He knows what his father needs him to do. He knows what Cersei needs him to do. He has spent his whole life doing what they need. He has done things for his family that he will not think about in the dark, because thinking about them doesn't help anything. He has spent a great many years trying not to think clearly about what he is. He starts walking again, faster now. He is going to the stables. He does not know yet what he is going to do when he gets there. He suspects he will know when his hand is on the horse's neck and the gate is in front of him. Some decisions are made before you make them, and some you have to ride toward. Robert Baratheon's column moves west along the Gold Road in good order, the horses finding the road in the grey morning light, the column strung out behind the king for nearly half a mile. Ned Stark rides at Robert's left hand, and Robert has been quiet since they passed through the last of the Crownlands farms and into the open country that is neither one thing nor another. He is thinking. Ned knows. Robert thinks the way he fights, slowly at first, working out the shape of the problem, and then all at once with everything he has. He'll have more men than we do, Robert says. Not for the first time. Yes, Ned says. Not for the first time. He'll have chosen his ground. Yes. So we need more men. Robert looks at the road ahead. The Tullys. Cat's father will fight, Ned says. Hoster Tully has never loved the Lannisters, and he will love them less when he hears what Cersei has done. Get a raven to River Run, Robert says. Tell Hoster to march the moment he receives it. Tell him the king asks it. Tell him Ned Stark asks it too, if that helps. It will help, Ned says quietly. Robert nods. He rides for a while, looking at the road. The country around them is rolling and green, the hills low and gentle, the sky wide and pale above them. What about Jaime? He asks. Ned is quiet for a moment. I don't know, he says. I talked to him. I don't know if it was enough. He's a king's guard who has spent 15 years protecting a throne he watched his father kill a king to put him on, Robert says. He's loyal to his family. Of course he is. I'd respect him more if he wasn't. He pauses. But he's loyal to something else too. I saw his face when I called Joffrey a bastard in that council room. He went very still. The way a man goes still when he has just heard something true that he has been not saying for a long time. That's not the same as choosing you over Tywin. No, Robert agrees. It's not. He reaches for the water skin on his saddle, drinks from it, puts it back. Send the raven to Hoster, and then let's ride hard. I want to be at the Golden Tooth before my father-in-law starts worrying about which side to be on. Ned sends the raven from the next way castle they pass. The bird goes up into the pale morning sky and turns west and is gone, carrying the king's words toward River Run, where an old lord with gout and 2 sons and a daughter who is married to the Lord of Winterfell sits in his great hall and doesn't yet know that everything is about to come to him. His name is Hoster Tully, and the news will not take him long to act on. Tyrion rides out of King's Landing 2 hours before dawn and doesn't look back. He takes the Gold Road west at a pace that is not quite a gallop, because he is not a man built for galloping, and the horse he borrowed from the stable knows this, and they reach an agreement somewhere around the first milestone. He rides hard enough to matter, and not so hard that he falls off, and the road opens ahead of him in the dark and the pre-dawn grey, and he thinks the whole way about numbers. 3 days, Pycelle said. 3 days is not much, but he knows his father's pace on a march, and he knows the Gold Road in the Westerlands, and he knows that Tywin does not hurry when he does not need to. If Robert has 4 days on the army, and Robert rides hard, he might reach the Golden Tooth before Tywin's outriders close the road behind him. Might. The word sits in his chest like a stone. He pushes the horse faster and thinks about what he is going to say when he gets there. Robert Baratheon and his column reach the Golden Tooth on the second day of hard riding, the horses lathered and the men quiet, with the grim endurance of soldiers who know they are riding toward something and do not know exactly what shape it will take. The Golden Tooth is a fortress cut into the pass, where the Gold Road narrows between the hills of the Westerlands, and it is Lannister-held, and the gates are shut when the king's column arrives. Robert looks at the gates for a moment. Then he rides forward alone to the distance, where a man on the wall can hear him without needing to shout. "Open the gates," he says. "Your king is here." The man on the wall looks down at him. He is a young Lannister guardsman with red on his tabard, and the look of someone who has just been told to do something very hard without being given instructions for it. He disappears from the wall. There is a long pause. Then he comes back. "My Lord Commander asks who rides with the king," the guardsman calls down. "Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Hand of the King," Robert says. 2,000 mounted men, and whatever patience I have left, which I warn you is getting thin." Another long pause. Then the gates open. The Lord Commander of the Golden Tooth is a man called Sir Adam Marbrand, who is 40 years old and has served the Lannisters his whole life, and who is standing in the courtyard with the expression of a man trying to calculate the fastest route to a decision he has not yet made. He kneels when Robert rides in. He stays kneeling. "Rise," Robert says. He looks down at him. "Where is Tywin Lannister's army?" Sir Adam stands. He is not a man who lies to kings, and Robert reads that in his face and is glad of it. 2 days east of Casterly Rock when the last rider came through, Your Grace. Moving on the Gold Road. How many men? The rider said 15,000. Robert nods slowly. He looks at the walls of the pass, the narrows where the road squeezes between rock faces before opening again into the rolling hills. He looks at Ned. Ned looks back at him. He knows what Robert is thinking. He is thinking it too. "Hold the pass," Robert says. "I need this gate held until Lord Hoster Tully's forces can come up from the east. Can you do that, Sir Adam?" Sir Adam is very still for a moment. Then he says, "Whose orders am I following, Your Grace?" "Mine," Robert says. "The King's." "Your Grace, my family holds this keep in service to—" "Your family holds this keep in service to the Iron Throne," Robert says. "I am the Iron Throne." He leans forward slightly in the saddle. "Tywin Lannister is marching an army toward his king without being called. That is not service. I want to know which side of this gate you plan to be on when his vanguard arrives." Sir Adam looks at the ground. He looks at the men behind Robert, the 2,000 riders who have been following their king for 2 days across the Crownlands, and who are sitting their horses with the patient attention of men who mean what they came here to mean. He looks back up at Robert. "I'll hold the pass," he says quietly. "Good man," Robert says. They begin organizing the defense before the horses are even fully watered. Meanwhile, to the east, Tyrion Lannister's borrowed horse stumbles on a stone in the road and nearly goes down, and Tyrion catches himself on the saddle horn and says something he will not repeat later, and the horse recovers, and they keep moving. He is maybe half a day behind Robert's columns now, or maybe more. He stopped at a way castle to change horses and eat something and send a raven north, and the raven going north is the one he thinks might actually matter. He sent it to Storm's End, which is where Stannis Baratheon was born, and which is where Stannis's garrison is still sitting, and the message said only, "Come north of the pass by the river road." He is not certain Stannis will listen to a Lannister. He is not certain Stannis knows who he is or why it matters. But Stannis left King's Landing with his fleet, and his fleet has transports, and transports can carry soldiers up the coast to where the river road meets the sea. And if those soldiers come up behind Tywin's army, while Robert holds the pass in front of it, he pushes the second horse into a gallop and thinks the rest of it through. Tywin Lannister rides at the head of his army with the same expression he wears in his solar at Casterly Rock, calm, attentive, not giving anything away. His outriders came back an hour ago with news that the Golden Tooth has changed hands, or nearly, and that the king is inside the pass with 2,000 men, and that the gates are shut against him. He had expected this. He expected it from the moment he read Cersei's first Raven, which told him what Robert knew, and he calculated the roads and the speeds, and he knows Robert does not have enough men to hold the pass against 15,000. He knows Hoster Tully is 2 days' march from River Run at his best pace, and Hoster Tully is not a young man and has not been a fast-marching man for 20 years. He knows there is no other force that could reach Robert before he does. What he does not know is where Tyrion is. He has not heard from Tyrion since before he left Casterly Rock. Tyrion was in King's Landing, which is either useful or not, and Tywin has spent 20 years trying to decide whether Tyrion is useful or not, and he has never fully resolved the question. What he knows is that Tyrion is clever. He knows it the way he knows his own reflection. Not with pride, exactly, but with the cold accuracy of a man who has always seen his children as they are, rather than as he wants them to be. He urges his column forward. The Golden Tooth is a day's march ahead. The road is good. The weather is clear. He has 15,000 men, and the king has 2,000, and the arithmetic of this is not complicated. But Tywin has always distrusted arithmetic that seems simple. Simple arithmetic is what happens when you have not yet found the thing you are missing. He rides on and sends extra outriders west and north to look for anything unexpected, and he watches the road, and he thinks. In River Run, Hoster Tully reads the King's Raven, and then reads Ned Stark's note at the bottom of it, and then calls for his maester and his sons and his captains, in that order. He is 62 years old, and his gout is bad, and the stairs give him trouble. But he has been a lord long enough to know that the times you feel least able to fight are often the times you cannot afford not to. He calls his banners. He sends riders to every keep in the riverlands that flies a trout. He tells his son Edmure to ready the cavalry, because cavalry moves faster than foot, and what they need right now is speed. His daughter Catelyn is in Winterfell, far north, and he thinks about her for a moment as he pulls on his riding boots. He thinks about the letter she sent him months ago, asking questions about Jon Arryn, and about how she said Ned was worried, and about how he told her not to meddle, because Lannisters were dangerous, and he was old, and it was easier not to know. He thinks about that letter, and about how it feels now. He laces the boot and stands, and goes to find his sons. The Tully host begins moving east on the Gold Road before evening. Tywin Lannister arrives at the Golden Tooth on a clear morning, and looks at the gates, and does what he always does. He calculates. The walls are Lannister built, and he knows every stone of them. He knows the width of the pass and the height of the battlements, and the number of men it takes to defend each section. He knows Robert has 2,000. He knows that 2,000 is not enough to hold these walls against a full assault if he is willing to pay the price for it, and he is almost always willing to pay the price for things. But he knows something else, too. He has been on this road for 3 days now, and his outriders have been sweeping east and west and north and south, and none of them have come back with anything useful, which is itself a kind of information. The silence around him is the wrong kind of silence. There is nothing to his north, and nothing to his east, and that does not feel right. He dismounts and walks to the edge of the road and looks at the hills above the pass. They are empty. They have been empty for an hour, and before that they were also empty. And before that, his rearguard reported seeing a single rider on a ridge to the north who disappeared when they tried to approach. He folds his hands behind his back and stands there looking at the hills. The assault begins at midday. His captains take 3,000 men to the walls in the first wave, and the fighting is exactly as hard as the walls are built to make it. And Robert Baratheon is on those walls himself, which his captains tell him afterward, but which he already knew from the sound of it. You can always tell when Robert fights. He makes a specific kind of noise, a combination of rage and delight that carries. The first wave is thrown back. The second wave pushes harder and loses more men, and is also thrown back. And Tywin watches this from the command position he has chosen, on a low rise south of the road, with the same expressionless attention he gives to everything. His third wave is forming when the outrider comes in from the east at a full gallop, with his horse lathered and his face white. "The Tully host," the man says, breathless, coming up fast on the road, maybe 8,000. Lord Edmure leads them. Tywin turns. His entire army is east of the pass right now, strung along the Gold Road, with the walls ahead of it, and open country behind it. If Hoster Tully's forces come up from the east, they will hit his rear while he is engaged at the gate. He thinks about this for roughly 4 seconds. Then he gives orders. The third wave peels off the gate and forms a rear guard. 2/3 of his army wheels to face east. He keeps the pressure on the pass with his remaining third, because the moment he pulls entirely away from it, Robert opens the gate. Tywin Lannister is now fighting a battle on 2 fronts with 15,000 men, which is a problem he did not anticipate. And the feeling of not having anticipated a problem is one of the few things in the world that genuinely angers him. He is still calculating when the third blow comes from the north. Stannis Baratheon does not announce himself. He does not send heralds or make speeches. He comes down from the northern hills with 4,000 men who came off his ships 2 days ago at the river mouth and marched fast and quiet through the back country, while Tyrion rode ahead of them and showed his riders the paths. And the first Tywin's men know about it is when the horns sound from the northern ridge, and the Baratheon banners come over the rise. The stag and the crowned stag together, and behind them Stannis Baratheon on a grey horse, with his square jaw and his cold eyes, and no expression at all, which is somehow more frightening than rage. Tywin's formation is already divided. It divides again. He has rear guard facing east, assault force facing the gate, and now the northern hill is full of Baratheon soldiers coming down in good order. He pulls his commanders in and reassesses in the 2 minutes he has before all 3 pressures become catastrophic, and what he concludes is what any honest general would conclude. He is in a trap, and the trap was built well, and the man who built it is not Robert Baratheon. He looks around for anyone who might have the profile of a very short man who rides badly, and he does not see one, and he thinks, Tyrion. The battle at the Golden Tooth is hard and bloody and lasts 4 hours. Robert Baratheon opens the gate himself when Stannis' horns sound from the north, and he rides out at the head of his 2,000 with the fury he has been carrying since the Kingswood, which is a considerable amount of fury, and he hits Tywin's divided assault force like a hammer. He is 42 years old, and he has not fought since the Greyjoy Rebellion, and he fights with the joy of a man doing the thing he is best at after years of doing nothing. Edmure Tully hits the rear guard from the east with Riverland's cavalry and some of the finest horses in the 7 kingdoms. Stannis descends from the north with the methodical efficiency that has always been his primary military quality, Not brilliance, but absolute relentlessness. The sense that he will keep coming no matter what. Tywin's army fights hard. It is a good army, well-trained and well-led, and it does not break easily. But it is fighting in 3 directions at once, and 3 directions at once is a problem that only gets worse over time. His center holds for 2 hours. Then it begins to bend. That is when Jaime Lannister arrives. He comes from the west, from behind Tywin's lines, which is the direction that nobody was watching because nobody expected anything to come from behind a Lannister army on a Lannister road. He has been riding since he left King's Landing 3 days ago, and he looks like it, and he is wearing gold and red because he ran out of reasons not to. He is a Lannister, and no one was going to let him through a battle line in dark traveling clothes. He rides through the Lannister rear with his father's name, opening every question anyone starts to ask him, and he reaches Tywin's command position on the low rise south of the road, and Tywin looks at him with no surprise whatsoever. "Cersei sent for you," Tywin says. "Cersei sent for me," Jaime agrees. He looks at the battle. He looks at the 3-sided trap that is slowly closing. He looks at his father. "It's over," he says. "You know it's over." "It has been over," Tywin says, "since the moment someone put Stannis Baratheon on that ridge. That took someone who understood strategy and had access to Stannis. Who was it?" Jaime looks at him. "Tyrion," Tywin says. The word comes out flat, like something that has been set down rather than thrown. "He was in King's Landing. He sent the Raven to Stannis. He led them up through the back country." He is quiet for a moment. "My own son." "He's your son," Jaime says. "He was always going to be what you made him." Tywin looks at him with the expression he uses when someone has said something accurate that he does not want to be accurate. "Send the parley flag," Jaime says quietly. "You know what you have, and you know what you don't have. You don't have time, and you don't have flanks, and the king is through the gate. Send the flag." Around them, the battle is changing shape. The Lannister center has bent into something more like a curved line, and the curved line is pulling in on itself, and everyone in it knows what that means. Men start to drop their weapons on the edges where the pressure is hardest, not because they are cowards, but because they can count. Tywin Lannister watches his army for a long time. His face is like the sea on a still day, flat and deep and giving nothing away about what is below. Then he says, "Get me the white flag." The fighting stops in stages, the way fires go out. The edges first, then the middle, then the last stubborn corners where men have committed too much to stop easily. Robert Baratheon rides through the gate at the head of his column and looks at what the battlefield has become, and he is covered in blood that is partly his and partly not, and Ned Stark rides up beside him with an expression of carefully controlled relief. Tywin Lannister is brought forward under a white flag. He dismounts in the road in front of the king, and he does not kneel until he has looked Robert in the eye. And even then, the kneel is not a collapse. It is the kneel of a man who has calculated that this is the correct decision, and is executing it with the same precision he brings to everything else. Robert looks down at him for a long moment. The battlefield is quiet around them, the strange quiet of 10,000 men who have been fighting for 4 hours and are now standing still. "Get up," Robert says. Tywin stands. "You marched an army against your king," Robert says. "I marched an army to protect my family," Tywin says. "Your family committed treason." There is a pause. Tywin's face does not change. "Yes," he says. The word is small, and the silence around it is very large. It is the admission of a man who has spent his entire life refusing to admit anything, and both of them know what it costs, and neither of them says so. Robert looks at him for a long time. Then he looks over Tywin's shoulder and sees Jaime standing behind his father's horse, still in gold and red, watching. Jaime Lannister meets the king's eyes across the road. He does not look away. The terms are settled in a tent on the Gold Road, with Ned Stark writing everything down in his careful northern hand, and Robert standing with his arms folded, and Tywin sitting across the table as if he is in his own solar, and not a prisoner discussing the price of his surrender. Tywin Lannister gives up his seat on the small council. He gives up the Westerland's host, which will be stood down and sent home. He agrees to pay a fine in gold that is large enough to make the point, but not so large that it strips the rock bare. Because Robert is angry, but not foolish, and a humiliated, impoverished Tywin Lannister is a more dangerous thing than a chastened, wealthy one. He agrees to a hostage arrangement. The hostage will be Tyrion. This last condition comes from Tywin himself, which surprises everyone in the tent except Tyrion, who is sitting in the corner and makes a sound when he hears it that could be a laugh or could be something else. "He's clever," Tywin says, not looking at him. "Keep him in King's Landing. He'll be more useful to you there than any man I could offer." Robert looks at Tyrion. Tyrion looks back at him with the expression of a man who has just been told his life's value and is deciding whether to be offended or amused. "Done," Robert says. Later, outside the tent, Tyrion finds Jaime standing at the edge of the road, looking west toward the Westerland's hills, which are green and gold in the late afternoon light. "He gave you up," Jaime says. Not an accusation. More like a thing he is turning over. "He gave the king what the king wanted," Tyrion says. "That's what he always does. Give the other man what he wants, as long as it costs the thing he values least." Jaime is quiet for a moment. "He doesn't value you. He values me the way he values a very good hunting dog," Tyrion says. "He acknowledges I'm useful. He's not going to weep if I'm somewhere else." He pauses. "It's fine. King's Landing suits me better than the Rock, anyway. Better wine." Jaime looks at him. There is something in his face that Tyrion does not often see there, which is guilt, clean and uncomplicated. "I should have done something sooner, before it came to this." "You did what you did when you were ready to do it," Tyrion says. "Showing up late with the parley flag is still showing up." He tilts his head. "What happens to you now?" "I don't know," Jaime says. "I haven't decided what I am yet." He pauses. "A king's guard who tried to stop his king from being killed probably shouldn't be in the King's Guard anymore. I don't know what else I am." "Start with not a traitor," Tyrion says. "It's a better foundation than most of us start from." In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister is taken from her apartments by Barristan Selmy and 2 gold cloaks and brought to a room in the Tower of the Hand, which is where Stannis Baratheon is now, in the absence of a hand, handling the legal portion of events. He is good at the legal portion of events. He has always been good at law and terrible at everything that requires understanding what other people want, and the law does not require that. Cersei sits across the table from him and looks at his face and says nothing. She has been calculating since the night the king came home, and the calculations have not been running in her favor for some time now. "The charges," Stannis says, without preamble, "are treason, specifically the passing of information to a hostile force with the intent to cause the death of the king. You will be confined to the Rock at Casterly Rock under supervision. Your children will remain in King's Landing with the king." Cersei says, "My children." "Your children," Stannis says. He does not say Joffrey is not Robert's, because the matter of Joffrey's parentage is a question the king has decided to handle personally, which means it will not be resolved cleanly or quickly, and everyone in King's Landing already knows it. What Robert announced to his council before he rode west was only that the succession was being reviewed, and that Stannis was his lawful heir until the review was complete, and that anyone who wished to dispute this could take it up with whoever survived the battle at the Golden Tooth. This turned out to be effective. Cersei looks at Stannis with the bright green eyes that are the same shade as Jaime's. "Robert won't send me to the Rock," she says. "He hasn't got the cruelty for it." "He hasn't got the cruelty," Stannis agrees. "He's got the law. I wrote the order." He pushes a parchment across the table. "He signed it this morning by Raven." Cersei reads it. Her face gives nothing away. She sets it down. "My children will be all right," she says. Not a question. "They are the king's children," Stannis says. "They will be cared for." She sits for a moment longer. Then she pushes back from the table and stands, and she walks to the window and looks out at the harbour and the sea beyond it. And she stands there with her back to Stannis Baratheon for a long time. "Then there's nothing left to discuss," she says. She goes quietly, which is not what anyone expected. Joffrey Baratheon is 12 years old, and the question of what he is does not get answered quickly or neatly. Robert sits with him in the Godswood, just the two of them, on the bench where Robert used to sit when he was young, and thought sitting in Godwoods was the kind of thing men did. It is not a comfortable bench, and it is not a comfortable conversation. He tells the boy the truth. He tells it plainly, the way Ned Stark would tell it, because he has been spending time with Ned Stark for the past month, and some of it has rubbed off. Joffrey sits very still and listens with his face closed, and Robert watches him and tries to read him and cannot, which is new. He has never tried to read his son before. He did not think he needed to. When he is done, Joffrey says, "Who knows?" "Everyone who was in that council room," Robert says, "and everyone they told." "So, everyone," Joffrey says, "more or less." Joffrey is quiet for a long time. He is looking at his hands. He has fine hands, gold-haired and long-fingered, and they look nothing like Robert's, and Robert has always known that, and not said so. "What do you want me to do?" the boy asks. Robert looks at him. He thinks about what Ned said in the Tower of the Hand, about what the boy could be if given the right influences. He thinks about Cersei's letters to Tywin and what they cost, and where she is now. He thinks about his own failings as a father, which are considerable, and which he has been thinking about more than usual lately. "I want you to be better than what you were raised to be," Robert says. "I don't know if you can do that. I don't know you well enough to know. But I'm going to find out." Joffrey looks up at him. The green eyes, the gold hair, the fine, long features, nothing of the stag in him. But something in the way he holds his chin, something in the set of his jaw, that is something Robert recognizes from mirrors and from the old paintings in the hall. "She's gone," the boy says. "My mother." "She's gone," Robert says. "You'll see her again when you're older. She's not dead." "I know she's not dead." He looks away. "I'm not a child." "No," Robert says, after a pause. "I don't think you are." Stannis Baratheon is named Prince of Dragonstone, and heir to the Iron Throne within the fortnight. He receives this news with the expression he always wears when he receives news, which is the expression of a man who was told something he already knew and is waiting for whatever the catch turns out to be. The catch, as far as he can tell, is that Robert intends to stay king for a long time and expects Stannis to spend that time helping him govern, which Stannis considers less a privilege than a sentence, but he accepts it because it is just and right, and those are the things Stannis Baratheon has always stood on. Ned Stark stays in King's Landing through the winter. He had planned to go home. He always plans to go home. But the small council needs someone on it who Robert will actually listen to. And that turns out to be Ned, which is the same problem it has always been. He writes to Catelyn. He tells her what happened, all of it. And he tells her he is staying. And he tells her he will be home in spring. She writes back that he had better be. Tyrion takes the rooms in the Tower of the Hand that are closest to the wine cellars, which is a practical decision, and he begins attending council meetings with the combination of sharp observation and well-timed remarks that will make him either very useful or very aggravating depending on who you are. And he is both. And the council adjusts. Robert Baratheon sits the Iron Throne and does not drink as much as he used to. He still drinks. He is not going to become a different man in his 40s than he was in his 30s. But the boar hunt changed something, or the decision not to go changed something, or what happened after changed something, and the thing that changed is that he has started paying attention. He sits in the small council meetings and listens to Tyrion's numbers and Ned's careful assessment and Stannis's cold legal precision, and he makes decisions, and the decisions are not always good, but they are his, and he owns them. He spends more time with Joffrey. It is awkward, the way everything between them has always been awkward, and he does not love the boy the way he loves the memory of Lyanna or the easy warmth he feels for Ned. But he shows up. He sits at the training ground and watches, and he stops walking away when the boy starts talking. Some days, Joffrey is the cold, hard thing he was raised to be, and some days he is something else, something younger and more uncertain. And on those days, Robert stays a little longer. One evening near the end of autumn, after a council session that ran long and a supper that ran longer, Robert finds Ned in the corridor outside the great hall and falls into step beside him, the way he has fallen into step beside him since they were boys at the Eyrie together. "Do you ever think about how it would have gone," Robert says, "if I'd gone on that hunt?" Ned is quiet for a moment. "I think about it," he says. "And I think you'd have died," Ned says. "And Joffrey would have been crowned, and I'd have been arrested within a week and executed within 2, and Stannis would have marched on King's Landing with his fleet, and Tywin would have come down from the rock. War," Robert says. "Yes," Ned says. "A bad one." Robert thinks about this. They walk together down the corridor, the torches guttering in the draught from the high windows. Outside, King's Landing is settling into night, the harbour lights steady on the water, the city breathing the long, slow breath of a city that does not know how close it came to burning. "Well," Robert says, "I suppose that's something." "It's something," Ned agrees. Robert stops at the window that looks out over the courtyard. The moon is up, and the yard below is pale and quiet. He rests his hands on the stone and looks at the city that is still his, against every reasonable expectation. "I'm glad I didn't go," he says. Ned stands beside him and looks out at the same city. "So am I," he says. "That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe.